called Babe the Blue Ox, a Minnesota tall tale retold by S.E. Schlosser. And it goes like this. One winter it was so cold that all the geese flew backward and all the fish moved south and even the snow turned blue. Late at night it got so frigid that all spoken words froze solid before they could be heard. People had to wait until sun up to find out what folks were talking about the night before. Paul Bunyan went out walking in the woods one day during that winter of the blue snow. He was knee-deep in blue snow when he heard a funny sound between a bleat and a snort. Looking down, he saw a teeny tiny blue ox just hopping about in the snow and snorting with rage on account of he was too short to see over the drifts. Paul Bunyan laughed when he saw the spunky little critter and took the little blue mite home with him. He warmed up the little ox by the fire, and the little fellow fluffed up and dried out, but he remained as blue as the snow that had stained him in the first place. So Paul named him Babe the Blue Ox. Any creature raised in Paul Bunyan's camp tended to grow to massive proportions, and Babe was no exception. Folks that stared at him for 5 or 6 minutes could see him growing right before their eyes. He grew so big that 42 axe handles plus a plug of tobacco could fit between his eyes, and it took a murder of cows a whole day to fly from one horn to the other. The laundryman used his horns to hang up all the camp laundry, which would dry lickety-split because of all the wind blowing around at that height. Whenever he got an itch, Babe the Blue Ox had to find a cliff to rub against, because whenever he tried to rub up against a tree, it fell over and begged for mercy. To whet his appetite, Babe would chew up 30 bales of hay, wire and all. It took 6 men with biggeroons to get all the wire out of Babe's teeth after his morning snack. Right after that, he'd eat a ton of grain for lunch and then come pestering around the cook, Sourdough Sam, begging for another snack. Babe the Blue Ox was a great help around Paul Bunyan's logging camp. He could pull anything that had 2 ends, so Paul often used him to straighten out the pesky, twisted logging roads. By the time Babe had pulled the twists and kinks out of all the roads leading to the lumber camp, there was 20 miles of extra road left flopping about with nowhere to go. So Paul rolled them up and used them to lay a new road into New Timberland. Sorry, obviously, as you can tell, some of the language is like very folklory, and it's not, a lot of the words and phrases like we don't really use. So anyway, I apologize if I'm saying some of these words a little mangled or some of the phrases a little funny. I'm trying my best. We continue. Paul also used Babe the Blue Ox to pull the heavy tank wagon, which was used to coat the newly straightened lumber roads with ice in the winter, until one day the tank sprang a leak that trickled south and became the Mississippi River. After that, Babe stuck to hauling logs. Only he hated working in the summertime, so Paul had to paint the logging roads white after the spring thaw so that Babe would keep working through the summer. One summer, as Babe the Blue Ox was hauling a load of logs down the whitewash road and dreaming of the days when the winter would feel cold again and the logs would slide easier on the ice, he glanced over the top of the mountain and got a glimpse of a pretty yeller calf grazing in a field. Well, he twisted out of his harness lickety-split and stepped over the mountain to introduce himself. It was love at first sight, and Paul had to abandon his his load and buy Bessie, the yeller cow, from the farmer before Babe would do any more hauling. Bessie, the yeller cow, grew to the massive yet dainty proportions that were suitable for the mate of Babe, the blue ox. She had long yellow eyelashes that tickled the lumberjack standing on the other end of camp each time she blinked. She produced all the dairy products for the lumber camp. Each day, Sourdough Sam made enough butter from her cream to grease the giant pancake griddle, and sometimes there was enough left over to butter the toast. The only bone of contention between Bessie and Babe was the weather. Babe... I had to adjust myself. Babe loved the ice and snow, and Bessie loved warm summer days. One winter, Bessie grew so thin and pale that Paul Bunyan asked his clerk Johnny Inkslinger to make her a pair of green goggles so she would think it was summer. After that, Bessie grew happy and fat again and produced so much butter that Paul Bunyan used the leftovers to grease the whitewashed lumber roads in summer. With the roads so slick all year round, hauling logs became much easier for Babe the Blue Ox, and so Babe eventually came to like summer almost as much as Bessie. And that's the end of that little tale. A really nice little lovely tale that was. So obviously that one we finished a little quickly. It wasn't very long, so I'll definitely do at least one more. Let's see what else, or what other folklore story I can find on here. Next one is called The First Years. It's an Inuit myth retold by S.E. Schlosser, the same person from the first tale. And it reads, once long ago, man went hunting along the water's edge for seals. To man's delight, many seals were crowded together along the seashore. He would certainly bring home a great feast for woman and son. He crept cautiously toward the seals. The seals grew restless. Man slowed down. Suddenly, the seals began to slip into the water. Man was frantic. His feast was getting away. The man saw a single seal toward the back of the group. It was not moving as quickly as the others. Here was his prize. He imagined the pride on a woman's face, the joy in son's eyes. Their bellies would be filled for many days from such a seal. Man crept toward the last seal. It did not see him, or so man thought. Suddenly, it sprang away and slipped into the water. Man rose to his feet. He was filled with a strange emotion. He felt water begin to drip from his eyes. He touched his eyes and tasted the drops. Yes, they tasted like salty water. Strange choking sounds were coming from his mouth and chest. Son heard the cries of man and called woman. They ran to the seashore to find out what was wrong with man. Woman and son were alarmed to see water flowing out of man's eyes. Man told them about the shore filled with seals. He told how he had hunted them and how every seal had escaped his knife. As he spoke, water began to flow from the eyes of woman and son, and they cried with man. In this way, people first learned to weep. Later, man and son hunted a seal together. They killed it and used its skin to make snares for more seals. So, this tale is supposed to be about a man who learns how to cry. He had never had that feeling, and when he finally learned how to cry, it kind of shocked him, his and his family. And it kind of just, it's a nice tale about, again, just man learning how to cry and people learning how to cry in general. And we definitely can do, again, a couple more. I mean, I'm not even doing this to tease you guys. I just don't know, because I don't know how long a lot of these are before I start reading them. But let me see what else I can read on here. So this next one is Paul Bunyan and the Frozen Flames. So obviously this story will be another tale around Paul Bunyan and hopefully his ox, like in the first tale I read. So, again, it's called Paul Bunyan and the Frozen Flames. It's Michigan Tall Tales, retold by S.E. Schlosser, which is the same person who retold the other tales. Maybe this entire website is retold by S.E. Schlosser. Anyway, Paul Bunyan and the Frozen Flames. One winter, shortly after Paul Bunyan dug Lake Michigan as a drinking hole for his blue ox babe, he decided to camp out in the Upper Peninsula. It was so cold that their logging camp that one evening, sorry, there's a typo here. It was so cold that in their logging camp one evening, the temperature dropped to 68 degrees below zero. Each degree in the camp thermometer measured 16 inches long, and the flames in the lanterns froze solid. No one, not even Paul Bunyan, could blow them out. The lumberjacks didn't want the bunkhouse lit at night because they wouldn't get any sleep, so they put the lanterns way outside of camp where they wouldn't disturb anyone. But they forgot about the lanterns, so that when thaw came in the early spring, the lanterns flared up again and set all northern Michigan on fire. They had to wake Paul Bunyan up so he could stamp out the fire with his boots. That's a nice short one. That's a nice, definitely a nice little story. And once again, we certainly have time for another one, so let's find another tale to read. Next one is called Dunkelberger Gravel Bar, a Rogue River tall tale, as told by Captain Tim Bruckner, collected by S.E. Schlosser. The gravel bar on our left is called Dunkelberger Gravel Bar. The reason I mention it to you is because it is one of the finest places on the whole Rogue River to fish from the bank. If you have a boat, you can fish most anywhere, but if you're cone-signed to the bank, and I know a lot of people prefer it, then this is where you want to go. Now, you can catch a salmon here, but what it's really noted for is its wonderful winter steelhead fishing, and steelhead fishing is really fun. In fact, it is one of the few fun things to do here in the winter when the weather gets real snotty and there's not much else to do. I'm sorry, snotty, that's not meant to be offensive. It's simply a local contraction meaning it's not a nice day to be outside, so stay inside. But you get real tired of being inside, might as well live in Michigan. Anyway, a lot of the locals here have gotten so into their steelhead fishing that what they've done, they've gone ahead and welded their rod holders right to the front bumpers of their big four-wheel drive pickups. You'll see them. They drive down to the edge of Dunkelberger, flip their gear out into the water, set their rods in the rod holder, climb back into the pickup, roll up the windows, turn on the heater, and there they sit all day long, chewing snooze, smoking horrible old cigars, drinking cheap whiskey, telling crude jokes, making up lies, chugging beer, having burping contests, lighting farts, talking about moving to Idaho, and trying to remember to roll down the window before they spin. Having a big time, catching a fish. I know every once in a while, when the fishing's real good, some of them might drag their husbands up here with them, just so they can catch the extra fish. That's what I think. I know my daughter Jessica, she was fishing up here last winter. She hooked a big old steelhead. She never got out of the truck. She put it in reverse, mashed on the gas, and yanked the fish 30 feet up the bank. That's an interesting one. Not so much a folk tale as much as a, like a little local story as told by Captain Tim Bruckner. Let's see, I'll do one more. Let's see what I can find here. The last one is called Rainbow Crow. It comes from the Lenape tribe and is retold by S.E. Schlosser. And it goes like this. ice formed over all the waters. The animals had never seen snow before. At first, it was a novelty, something to play in, but the cold increased tenfold, and they began to worry. The little animals were being buried in the snowdrifts, and the larger animals could hardly walk because the snow was so deep. Soon, all would perish if something were not done. We must send a messenger to Kichamu Kao, the creator, who creates by thinking that what will be, said Wise Owl. We must ask him to think the world warm again so that Spirit Snow will leave us in peace. The animals were pleased with his plan. They began to debate amongst themselves, trying to decide who to send up to the creator. Wise Owl could not see well during the daylight, so he could not go. Coyote was easily distracted and liked playing tricks, so he could not be trusted. Turtle was steady and stable, but crawled too slowly. Finally, Rainbow Crow, the most beautiful of all the birds with shimmering feathers of rainbow hues and an enchanting singing voice, was chosen to go to see the creator. It was an arduous journey, 3 days up and up into the heavens, past the trees and clouds, beyond the sun and the moon, and even above all the stars. He was buffeted by winds and had no place to rest, but he carried bravely on until he reached heaven. When Rainbow Crow reached the holy place, he called out to the creator, but received no answer. The creator was too busy thinking up what would be to notice even the most beautiful of birds, so Rainbow Crow began to sing his most beautiful song. The creator was drawn from his thoughts by the lovely sound, and came to see which bird was making it. He greeted Rainbow Crow kindly and asked what gift he could give the noble bird in exchange for his song. Rainbow Crow asked the creator to unthink the snow so that the animals of Earth would not be buried and freeze to death. But the creator told Rainbow Crow that the snow and the ice had spirits of their own and could not be destroyed. "What shall we do then?" asked the Rainbow Crow. "We will all freeze or smother under the snow." "You will not freeze," the creator reassured him, "for I will think of fire, something that will warm all creatures during the cold times." The creator stuck a stick into the blazing hot sun. The end blazed with a bright glowing fire which burned brightly and gave off heat. "This is fire," he told Rainbow Crow, handing him the cool end of the stick. "You must hurry to Earth as fast as you can fly before the stick burns up." Rainbow Crow nodded his thanks to the creator and flew as fast as he could go. It was a 3-day trip to heaven, and he was worried that the fire would burn out before he reached Earth. The stick was large and heavy, but the fire kept Rainbow Crow warm as he descended from heaven down to the bright path of the stars. Then the fire grew hot as it came closer to Rainbow Crow's feathers. As he flew past the sun, they still caught on fire, turning the shimmering, beautiful feathers black. By the time he flew past the moon, his whole body was black with soot from the hot fire. When he plunged into the sky and flew through the clouds, the smoke got into his throat, strangling his beautiful singing voice. By the time Rainbow Crow landed among the freezing cold animals of Earth, he was black as tar and could only caw instead of sing. He delivered the fire to the animals, and they melted the snow and warmed themselves, rescuing the littlest animals from the snowdrifts where they lay buried. It was a time of rejoicing, for Tinde, fire, had come to Earth, but Rainbow Crow sat apart, saddened by his dull, ugly feathers and his rasping voice. Then he felt the touch of the wind on his face. He looked up and saw the creator who creates by thinking what will be, walking toward him. "Do not be sad, Rainbow Crow," the creator said. "All animals will honor you for the sacrifice you made for them, and when the people come, they will not hunt you, for I have made your flesh taste of smoke, so that it is no good to eat, and your black feathers and hoarse voice will prevent man from putting you into a cage to sing for him. You will be free." Then the creator pointed to Rainbow Crow's black feathers. Before his eyes, Rainbow Crow saw the dull feathers become shiny, and inside each one he could see all the colors of the rainbow. They will remind everyone who sees you of the service you have been to your people," he said, "and the sacrifice you made to save them all. And so shall it ever be." enjoyed making this episode. I definitely plan on doing more North American folklore and tales in the future, or reading them. So expect that heading forward. But that's the end of this episode. If you loved it or hated it, you can send me an email to sleepandrelaxasmr@gmail.com. And you can also check out the website sleepandrelaxasmr.com. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you're going to get access to discounts to really cool products, access to what's going on with the show, and probably more importantly, or most importantly, you will basically be able to decide what episodes I do